Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Dirks, and on behalf of ACRL and Choice, I would like to welcome you to today's program, which is part of the Socially Distanced Library series. Today's webinar is titled Transitioning Faculty to Online Teaching Environments, and it is sponsored by Taylor and Francis. Today's discussion is one in a series of sponsored webinars from ACRL and Choice that addresses new ideas, developments, and products of interest to the academic library community. For ED users, these structured 60-minute live presentations provide the opportunity for interactive discussions of important new issues and developments in academic librarianship by librarians, vendors, authors, and other interested stakeholders. Before we get started, I would like to point out just a couple of features of the webinar software. In the main area of the screen, you should be able to follow along with the presentation materials. Along the right-hand side, you may see options to open up and close the chat panel and the Q&A panel. Please use the Q&A panel to ask questions for our speakers today. At the end of the presentation, we'll take a few minutes to answer as many questions as we have time for. So, as I said, please do feel free to drop any questions you have in that Q&A module. The chat box is where you can reach me with any technical problems you may be having. If you're not able to hear or the screen isn't showing up for you, those sorts of things, message me directly through the chat and we'll troubleshoot those issues privately that way. Also note that we are recording today's program and everyone who signed up should receive a follow-up email with a link to the archived version. And today's presenters, I will take just a second to do a quick intro here for Tracy Coyne and Michelle Guitar. Tracy Coyne is the Distance Learning and Professional Studies Librarian at Northwestern University. She is the liaison to the School of Professional Studies and supports a number of undergraduate, graduate, and continuing studies programs. And Michelle is the head of instruction and curriculum support at Northwestern University Libraries. She also serves as the Latin American Studies Librarian and liaison to the Department of Spanish and Portuguese and the Latino Studies Program. All right, with that, we are ready to get started. So I'll make a quick transition over to our slides there and hand it over to Michelle.
All right, thank you, Mark. Thank you everyone for coming today. As Mark said, my name is Michelle Guitar. I'm the head of instruction and curriculum support at Northwestern University Libraries. And Tracy Coyne is our distance education librarian, also from Northwestern. And also a special thanks to ACRL Choice for having us today and Taylor and Francis for sponsoring this webinar series. We're really excited to share with you this project we've been working on over the summer. So as Mark said, the title of our talk is The Socially Distanced Library, Transitioning Faculty to Online Teaching Environments. So where did we start? Like many of you, in the spring of 2020, we had to make a very quick transition to online teaching. We are on the quarter system, so in March, we were finishing up our winter quarter. Faculty were given an extra week of spring break to prepare for spring quarter and really told to just use existing technologies and get basic training wherever they could. So faculty were really left to find their own way amongst different workshops that were offered by Northwestern IT, by the library, and other campus departments. With this very fragmented environment at the beginning of the spring quarter, we decided to get together and collaborate to develop a single united workshop series for faculty that would give them an introduction to remote teaching. And the collaborators on this project were Northwestern Libraries, but also Northwestern Information Technology, the Searle Center for Advancing Learning and Teaching, which is our campus faculty training and development center, often called a Center for Teaching and Learning, perhaps on your campus. We also worked with the School of Professional Studies distance learning team, and they have great expertise in developing online courses and programs because they've been doing it for years, unlike the rest of us who were totally scrambling. They already knew how to do this. And we also collaborated with Accessible NU, which is the campus department that deals maybe first and foremost with accommodations for students, faculty, and staff, but also provides training in universal design for learning and aims to make the Northwestern experience just more accessible in general. So it goes beyond just what we might think of as accessibility or accommodations. So with these units in mind, we had all been offering these emergency workshops basically for faculty. So Northwestern Libraries had been offering a couple workshops, first in using the library remotely, how to use specific collections remotely, and then how to use open educational resources in courses. Northwestern Information Technology had been doing trainings for faculty in Canvas and in Zoom. Canvas is our course management system. Zoom is a tool. Everyone knows what Zoom is by now. The Searle Center had been doing some trainings in how to lead discussions or how to do assessments, and they'd been also offering those online as well. And then I already mentioned the School of Professional Studies. They knew what they were doing completely, and Accessible NU had been doing these universal design for learning trainings, but not online. So we were all kind of at different stages, but we still decided to come together to make this unified workshop series for faculty. So when we started to work together, this was, I should mention, it's not on the slide, but this was the first time that these Canvas units had come together to work on a project where we would be equal partners. This wasn't the library driving the bus and everyone else came along. This was really a collaborative effort. And when we put this workshop series together, we really wanted to focus on pedagogy. So with this transition to remote learning, I think there's a lot of interest in technology for faculty and what can this technology do and how do I use this technology. But we really wanted this workshop series that we are going to develop together to be grounded in pedagogy and good teaching first, with the technology as the method for this good teaching, not the primary focus. One thing that we had to do in working in this really collaborative environment together was to really recognize that we each had mutual expertise from our experiences working with faculty. Everyone had had different experiences with faculty and different experiences offering workshops, and we really had to put aside, in some cases, our own biases about what I might think work or this person would think work, to just say, okay, based on that experience, let's move ahead and try this. So being open to what other people had to say was crucial. And that really leads into my next point, that collaboration in a lot of senses really meant compromise. So as I mentioned, the library was a true partner in this. We were not the leader. So I mentioned a little bit ago, we had offered at the beginning of spring lots of different workshops about the library. And when I approached this project, I was thinking, oh my goodness, we have so many workshops to offer. We'll include all of them in this faculty workshop series. And in reality, we have one. So we have one workshop that's on open educational resources that's formally part of this workshop series. And that was true with all of the collaborators. Everyone had much more to bring to this workshop series than we were able to incorporate. So we had to take a step back and think what was really essential for these faculty as they were trying to put their courses online quickly. And just a last note about working together, I really found that working with Zoom and working remotely was a total unifying experience for us because we were working with people from different campus units. We hadn't really worked together before. If we'd been trying to do anything like this in person, we would have gotten, I think, tied up in the details about, well, where do we meet? Whose office are we going to be closest to? What time are we going to be meeting at? Who's available when? But because of the timeline that we were working on, we tried to pull this we did. We did pull it together in about a month. We knew we just had to meet every day online. We had a standing meeting. If you couldn't make one, that was fine, but you went to the next one. So, and of course, everyone had interruptions by cats and dogs and kids and internet issues and all of that. So it really ended up providing this very unifying experience where we were all on the same page. So that was very, very interesting. So now let me tell you what we actually came up with. I've been talking about the process. What we actually came up with was this workshop series that we named the Practicum in Foundations of Online Teaching. And it ended up being a 3-week online course for faculty that we deliver primarily through Canvas and Zoom. But it combines workshops that are bigger group discussions with small group discussions in what we call cohorts and one-on-one meetings with learning designers. So there's 3 different sort of group structures that are embedded in this workshop series. And the learning designers specifically are kind of the most valuable parts of this practicum because they meet one-on-one with faculty to help them work through Canvas, work through incorporating specific technologies, and just work through the ideas behind course mapping and online course design that faculty may not have had any training in before. So we were lucky enough at Northwestern to already have a number of learning designers on staff, either through the School of Professional Studies or the Northwestern IT Teaching and Learning Technologies Department. And before, those learning designers really helped with blended classes or maybe in-person classes where a faculty member wanted to incorporate a few kind of extra activities through Canvas. Now they're supporting completely online and remote teaching. So we're happy, very happy to have them now. So the goals of this practicum were really to provide, again, those foundations and skills of online teaching and learning, and to really give faculty the ability and some beginning skills and knowledge to translate their in-class experience into an online learning environment. So when we structured this practicum, we knew we were going to offer this over a course of 3 weeks. And we were not going to be able to get faculty from total novice to expert in that time. But we really just wanted to see growth. We wanted to see faculty go from being really uncertain about teaching online and having not much knowledge, not much understanding of the online course design process, to being knowledgeable enough to start and to know where to find more information. So that was really the goal, was growth and getting a growth in confidence among faculty. We also wanted to use the practicum itself to really model best practices for online teaching. So the online practicum course really includes synchronous meetings, it includes small group discussions, it includes discussion boards, it includes readings, videos, podcasts. It's really created to mimic a very rich online learning environment that we hope faculty can see and then start to mimic in their own courses. And we also wanted this cohort structure that we will hear more about throughout this presentation to start to create a support network for faculty who may not know what their colleagues are doing, especially now that everyone is working remotely, may not be able to run into people in the hall and ask them about their online teaching experiences. We wanted to give this cohort structure a place where faculty could hear what other people are doing and get more comfortable with online teaching. So the topics that we covered in this 3-week practicum, the first week, what we considered the basics, we had to start with this, was universal design for learning and just course mapping. Neither one of those topics are specific to technology. Technology is useful for both of them, but they aren't centered on technology. So universal design for learning can be applied in an in-person environment. It can also be applied in a fully online environment. So we really started off with this very grounding experience with universal design for learning and course mapping. And course mapping is just the process of saying, in this course or this week, these are my learning goals, these are going to be my assessments for that content, and these are the activities we're going to use to close that instructional cycle. So just some basics. Week 2, we go a little bit deeper and we talk about engaging students through active learning and taking that course map and putting it into an online course design. So with that, we anticipate that people will get a little bit more involved in their specifics of their course and become more prepared to really dig into online course design. And then in week 3, we give them a chance to step back, to look at where they've come, and to talk to their peers about their courses and the courses of their peers who are also faculty. So there's a peer feedback exercise in week 3 as well. And throughout the practicum, I just want to, this slide is a little overwhelming, but I'm going to walk you through it. So this is an example of a 3-week session that we had for the practicum earlier this summer. So over 3 weeks, the blue meetings are cohort group meetings where those are those small group discussions, and that really bookends the experience. There's one at the beginning, and there's 2 in week 3 that are really designed to give people a chance to talk about their own experiences and relate to one another. The core sessions are in this sort of red-pink color, and that was, again, universal design for learning, active learning and student engagement, and then online course design, which is core session 3. And faculty had a choice of times, but those dates were set. And those were synchronous workshops where everyone from all the different cohorts came to one of those, and there was a presentation with breakout rooms. Every day in the afternoon, there were recommended optional sessions on technology or open educational resources or different workshops offered by the Searle Center or other campus departments. And then at various times throughout weeks 1, 2, and 3, there were those consultations with their learning designers. So what's on here is all of the synchronous meetings. However, almost all of these were recorded and transcribed. Sometimes we didn't standardize the cohort meetings, but all of the core sessions and recommended sessions were all recorded and transcribed and put into Zoom. So faculty, if they missed one, they could go back, listen to it, or read it. They could do that with a recommended session. And in addition to the sessions being recorded and transcribed, all of the core sessions had a really rich amount of content that was asynchronous. So linking people to readings, videos, podcasts. There's a discussion board that we added for each core session to really give people the chance to interact with the material in different ways and start to think about how they could really use what they were learning in their own courses. So how were librarians involved? You will notice I haven't talked a lot about the library specifically, certainly not a lot about sort of what we might think of as traditional library instruction, where we might do a database demo or how to use specific resources. But librarians here, we have served as cohort facilitators. And each cohort has been comprised of about 10 to 15 faculty or instructors, and those are the small group discussions that I've been referring to. So these cohorts are grouped by discipline, roughly. So we tried to bring together arts and humanities faculty, hard sciences faculty, social sciences. We had a couple cohorts just for first-year seminars. We had a couple cohorts of Feinberg is our medical school medical faculty or law faculty, and all these people have served as facilitators. We've had 21 librarians that will have served as facilitators by the end of the summer. So why librarians? As I said, this is not bibliographic instruction, but why are we here? I really see us as campus connectors. I think among all of the people on this image, the majority have attended at least one, if not many, trainings that are offered by the different campus units that are involved in this practicum, whether it be Accessible NU, Northwestern IT, our Center for Teaching and Learning. So we have a broad knowledge of these topics. However, we don't have a 4-credit class that we offer here as part of like an information literacy requirement. So we aren't invested specifically in online course design. So not having that expertise, I think really has allowed the facilitators that have been librarians to cultivate a very neutral space for faculty where they can talk about their own courses, they can talk about the content of these workshops without any judgment. Just we are there to facilitate their discussions and connect them with the campus resources that are going to help them with this course. Another thing to mention is that something else we had going for us in serving in this role is we have a fair amount of librarians. There's 20 people here, 21 librarians here, and we still had others that were interested in facilitating that haven't yet. We really had the support of our administration to invest the time in this project, specifically right now because of the way that this project has raised the visibility of librarians on campus. Like many of you, we are coming up on some uncertain budget times, and anything that gets our librarians more embedded in the campus, more embedded with faculty training and development, which as I mentioned we have not been involved in before, has just been a totally great experience from our administrator's point of view. So we are so excited that we've been involved in this. And so we've had about 21 facilitators. We'll have about 21 different librarians facilitating before the end of the summer. And we've had really two groups of this practicum running. We had three-week sessions running in the preparing for the summer 2020. So that was in our spring quarter. So we had almost 200 faculty or instructors participating in 15 cohorts during that time. And then in preparing for the fall, which we've been running this summer, we've had about 300 participants and 20 cohorts going over this summer. So it's been a very busy summer for us trying to help get campus ready for what will likely be a primarily remote fall. We've had, and you can see this is as of about a week and a half ago, due to the practicum and due to the interest in the practicum, the Northwestern IT department has been given clearance to hire more learning designers temporarily. So we're actually hoping we'll be able to get this number over 300 before the fall quarter starts in September. And of this group, I think all of the Northwestern colleges have been represented. So I mentioned we've had medical faculty, law faculty, School of Music, College of Arts and Sciences, engineering, and we've also had many faculty participate who are affiliated with our NU Cutter campus, which Tracy worked with specifically. So we've had to meet all sorts of needs, all different kinds of courses, but in general, we've been really excited to participate in this initiative so far. So with that, we're now going to transition to this is the 10,000 foot view. Now we're going to go down a little bit, and Tracy is going to talk about her experiences from the front lines as a facilitator for the cohorts.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you again to ACRL Choice and Taylor and Francis for sponsoring this webinar today. So what did it mean to be a librarian facilitator for this? I have facilitated two groups so far. My first group was part of the May run that we did, and the second group started July 6th and wrapped up on July 24th. So the information that I'm bringing you today is quite fresh because I've just wrapped up my second cohort about a week and a half ago. So as a first-time facilitator, getting oriented to the course and its components on a quick time frame was paramount. When I volunteered for this back in May, we had great training sessions, but we had a few things that we were still putting together. So we all knew going into this that a few things were still being worked out, but that was fine. Everybody agreed, and it worked out just fine. I would say the biggest thing I had to do was to familiarize myself with the content of the course and my role. What did I do? What was I not expected to do? That took some time to learn. I probably spent about 8 hours before I had my first meeting, going over thoroughly the content in the Canvas course, understanding the meetings that I was responsible for holding, what everybody else was supposed to do, what was scheduled on what days. You saw the schedule a few slides back with all the color coding. I had to memorize what all that meant and what my involvement was, what I was responsible for. So it took a while, but it was worth it because I was able to act as a guide, which is what I was supposed to be as a facilitator for my cohorts. And in the first group in May, I had 11 people in my cohort. In the second group in July, I had 13. So it was really just the perfect amount of people to foster discussions, to trade suggestions back and forth. Just, I would say, the perfect size for what we were doing. One of the things I didn't know exactly about was what the consultants were going to do. I just wasn't quite sure because we hadn't met with them ahead of time. I had a vague idea, but I really had to learn by osmosis and by reading that the consultants were there to help the attendees plan their course. In other words, take a course that probably would have been face-to-face in the past and put all that online. And you can imagine there's a lot that goes into that. So after the first cohort ran, I understood a lot more. Plus, I attended a lot of the same meetings that my cohort members were attending. And so I educated myself on the whole process. We had minor tech difficulties, and that really had to do with sign-ons. We had people trying to sign into the Zoom sessions by using a Gmail account or an MSN account or a Yahoo email account, and we finally had to tell everybody, you know, even though we told them up front, they missed it, that they had to sign in with their NU credentials. So really in the second run, by the time we got to the cohort that started in July, we had this message all over the place. It was plastered all over our communications. It was in the Canvas course. It was in the email letters that I would send out to my cohort members so that everybody understood, and that little difficulty went away. So what is this? Well, this is our beautiful landing page. This was in the July run. In our May run, because we were trying to get ramped up so quickly, we had a much plainer interface in Canvas. It was still organized, it was still attractive, but it was rather plain. It was mostly just white and black and maybe a little bit of green or an accent color. But in this iteration, we really ramped it up, and I think the designers did a terrific job. As you can see on the left side, there's a sidebar menu that's typical of Canvas or other learning management systems. So for people that are not into interacting with the colorful menu, they knew that they could rely on the sidebar and they would use that. Otherwise, the tiles here that you see, particularly the 4 in the middle plus the schedule just below that, there is a little bit of a visual tip-off that they're interactive in that you see like a solid block stripe on the left side, which does indicate that this is an interactive tile. Please press me to see what's behind room 1 or door number 1 or door number 2, etc. So that was the design. And it worked out very well. People thought it was very intuitive, very nice and streamlined. The schedule became everyone's best friend because it really oriented you as to what you were supposed to be doing on any given day. It also was a place where we had all the Zoom links embedded, so if people knew that they were running late, they had to get to a Zoom meeting in the next 5 minutes, they knew that they could just hone in on the schedule and go there and find the link to sign on. Also in this beautiful, colorful iteration, we did add something, and that was a 3-minute video to orient new users to the site as to what was in the practicum, what's it all about, high-level important points for content, and how a little bit on navigation as well. And this slide shows you a little bit of detail from week 1. You can see that the design is attractive. It's very clean. We divided up our content between required activities and optional activities with the dividing line, so you can see that there's no confusion as to what is what. We also added visual icons for those who are more oriented towards pictures or a visual cue or display. So you can see under Universal Design for Learning, for example, there is an icon that looks like a piece of film. Under or next to course session number 1, you will see an icon that looks like a Zoom screen. Under course mapping, we have icons that are open books indicating there is a reading assignment. Below that, there is a pencil, which indicates there was a writing, something to be written, an assignment of that nature. And then under optional, for the discussions, we had little talk bubbles that indicated discussion post. And for weeks 2 and 3, there was a similar layout. So, what was the cohort experience from the viewpoint of a librarian facilitator? As I mentioned at the beginning, there was a significant time investment that I thought was necessary in order to be comfortable with the content, also to understand my cohort. What schools were they coming from? What classes were they teaching? I got a little bit of that information with the registration information that we were given, so that helped. I would also say that for those who would be considering something like this and to be a facilitator, it does help to be self-organized. So if you know that you have to tell people every few days that such and such a meeting is coming up, or to remind them of certain activities, it does help to be someone who's comfortable with checking in every day on a schedule, seeing what the group is, what is on their schedule today, to know exactly where they would be in case you had questions. And I did invite questions, and I did receive email questions. But other than that, if you're an organized person, you wouldn't have any problem doing this, I'm sure. My cohort, as I mentioned, my first cohort had 11 participants. The second one had 13, and I thought that was an optimal amount of people to foster discussion. We had 3 cohort meetings, as Michelle mentioned. The first meeting was on the very first day of the practicum, and that was our kickoff meeting. Meeting 2 and 3 were in the 3rd week of the practicum. The second meeting had to do with peer review, excuse me, and the last meeting was on the last day of the practicum, which was a wrap-up meeting. So right off the bat, in the kickoff meeting, the first day, my intention was to build community. And really, I didn't have to do that much to do it, because the cohort kind of took over. I found that the people that were enrolled in this practicum tended to be forward-thinking, self-motivated, open-minded. They really wanted to do a good job for their students, either in the summer or the fall going forward. And so they really were a great bunch of people, and were willing to trade tips back and forth. For example, in the kickoff meeting, we had one attendee who was having trouble seeing the Canvas screen. He was comparing what I was showing him when I shared my screen on Zoom to what he was looking at on his laptop, and he said, you know, I'm just not seeing some things. And one of the other members piped up and said, oh, are you using Safari? Now, there's a known issue with Safari as a browser with Canvas. You know, if you switch to Firefox or Chrome, it'll clear right up. And sure enough, the other attendee did that, problem solved. So that was a great example of how, you know, two people who hadn't met each other before, came from totally different schools within Northwestern, helped each other right off the bat, and that really set the tone really for the rest of the cohort. So core sessions, what do I mean by core sessions? Well, as Michelle mentioned, we had 3 content areas that we were conveying in this practicum. Universal design for learning was one of them, and active learning was another one, and then the third one was quality online course design with peer review. So those made up the 3 core sessions, and those meetings were spread out among the 3 weeks or 15 days that we had for the participants for this practicum. I was invited to attend all the core sessions if my schedule permitted. We weren't required to, but I did attend everything because I wanted to see what was being discussed and hopefully be a better resource for the cohort going forward. And these were great sessions. They were all an hour in length. They were all recorded so that if the cohort could not make it to any one of these, they knew that they could rely on having a recording of the session. But we did exhort them to attend the live session because, for one thing, you can ask questions and usually get a reply immediately. For another, it's interactive. You can talk with other people in the session and learn things. So we just we pushed that when we could, but of course we understood that people have scheduling conflicts and other responsibilities. And then the learning designers. As I said, I learned their role by osmosis, and by the second run of the practicum, I completely understood what they were there to do. I, as a facilitator, worked completely independently from them. The members of my cohort would met with them for their first meeting as a group, and then the second and third meetings were one-on-one meetings with the individual learning designer or consultant, as we also called them. And as Michelle mentioned, this was the most valuable part of the entire practicum. This is what we saw on all our feedback sheets, is that our attendees said this is really valuable. They would recommend this practicum to others, their peers, because of this very exercise that they went through. So it was very valuable for them. And as I mentioned, yes, they had 3 meetings with the consultants. And what were the recommended sessions? Okay, this was the 4th category. These sessions were completely optional. These were also 1 hour in length. They were also recorded. And again, I was encouraged to attend if my schedule permitted, and I did attend most of them. There were 12 unique sessions, 5 of which repeated. So in our first week, we offered the 5 sessions. We repeated again in the 3rd week, and then in the middle week, we had slightly different programming. And you can see that the sessions were building online community, facilitating discussion with asynchronous and synchronous elements, open educational resources, grading in Canvas, group work online, tools fair 1 and 2, and Zoom practice. And just to speak a little bit about this OER class that was offered was one of our own. We're very proud of this because this is one that the library wrote and sponsored. And this was being offered by one of our colleagues, Lauren McKean, who's our liaison for OER. The Tools Fair 1 and 2 was really a showcase of tools that you could use in your class, featuring such tools like Padlet, Miro, which is a whiteboard tool, Flipgrid, using the polling feature, that type of thing. And then Zoom practice, this was great. This was a really low stakes, low pressure, low stress opportunity for the attendees to meet with a Northwestern student and practice their Zoom skills with them. And the attendees just loved this because they felt like they could make mistakes. The students were very kind. They weren't going to rat them out. And they really appreciated that opportunity. So here is our testimonial slide. What did the faculty say about this? We heard a lot about best practices, and one of the things that we offered in our Canvas course was additional campus resource guide that we put together. It's a page full of hyperlinks to all sorts of tools throughout Northwestern's campus. Some of the links go to websites for Accessible NU, for example, for Universal Design and Learning, for all sorts of different support tools. So it was really wonderful, and we were happy to provide that to them. They also said that, as I mentioned earlier, that the meetings with the consultants or the learning designers were the most valuable. So they really love that, and they would recommend the practicum to others based on that alone. Okay. And so I've been talking about, which is the title of this session, transitioning faculty to online teaching environments. So from my position as a librarian and facilitator, do I think that we were successful? In my own humble opinion, I would say I think that we were. How do I know that? Well, you saw the slide earlier where we had quite a number of increased attendees in our successive iterations of the course, and we had a lot of positive feedback. So I would say yes, that we did. And then what have I learned from this whole practicum? I've learned that I, as well as the people in my cohort, have a greater empathy for what students go through learning online. For one thing, they saw what it was like to have a very busy summer with, keeping up with all their other appointments, and then also tuning into this practicum, perhaps having the Zoom meeting for the practicum of any particular day being maybe the third or fourth Zoom meeting that day. So they could really relate to a sense of fatigue that their students might have as well. I also really love the sense of community that we built. The give and take, back and forth sharing was really wonderful. I got a lot of inspiration, and I was energized by the cohort members. It was really amazing to see how much instructors care about the job they are doing and wanting to do the best possible job for their students as possible. I tried to model behavior in my cohort meetings that I had, the 3 meetings. So for the kickoff meeting, I did make use of Zoom's breakout room feature. I made use of the polling feature. I recorded the meeting. The attendees got to see what captioning was all about. So from the very first meeting, I think they got an idea of, oh, this is how Zoom works, and these are some of the tools that we can use with Zoom for an online class. There was a great amount of support and camaraderie, and I have to say that support includes from the planning team, a part of which Michelle was. The executive team gave us a lot of great tools. For example, there was a facilitator's guide that was embedded in my administrator view in Canvas that I could pull up at any time. And that also featured 7 form email letters that we could use, which were wonderful because we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We could depend on using that and know that everybody consistently was getting the same information. So that was really helpful. We also had training sessions before we even got started. And then one of the things that we added in this iteration in July was that we now have drop-in hours every Friday for facilitators who are involved with the practicum. So we can come and ask questions of each other or get suggestions for things. It really has been wonderful. So I really appreciated the support. As far as communication go, I would say make use of form letters for consistency. Don't communicate too often. That is every day, because if you do, your messages probably will not be read because they're just too frequent, but rely instead on the consistency of the form letter. And then another improvement that we made was that initially, when the practicum was run in May, we were closing the Canvas site for the practicum on the very last day of the practicum. We eventually moved that to the end of summer so that the attendees could get in and attend some of the meetings that they might have missed, attend them live. They could get to the Zoom links or just to reread something or maybe download something they had forgotten about earlier. And now we've even extended it past the end of summer. We're leaving the Canvas site open until December. And this is directly from a suggestion that we had from our attendees. So I thought it was very successful. It was great to be involved in this. And I'm now going to turn it over to Michelle, who will talk a little bit about future plans. Michelle?
So in planning for the future, Tracy, could you go one more slide? Just so you all can see what we're going to talk about, planning for the future. And so because this has been a really successful program, we're hoping to continue to offer this practicum throughout the fall in preparation for the winter. Even though we don't know yet what the winter quarter will hold, it's unfortunately likely that it will continue to either be a hybrid model or some in-person, some remote classes. So we know that we're going to keep doing this. And so in general, that's very positive. We also, I think, have learned from this experience that we are capable in the library of being a really valuable collaborator for these faculty training and development initiatives. Before this, we really didn't have a voice. We didn't have a place at the table to contribute in any way in this scale for faculty development. So that's been really positive as well. And we're already seeing new ideas for projects or trainings come up where in the past it might have just been one unit that has really taken the lead on this training, but now they start to think, oh, right, because the practicum worked, maybe we should include the library. So we're starting to see already the fruits of some of this collaboration be valuable to us in the library and continue to raise our profile. So with that, thank you so much, all of you, for coming today. I know it's always busy right now this time of year at the beginning of August before school starts, so we really appreciate all of you coming. With that, we have time for Q&A, and I see there's been a fair amount of activity in the Q&A, so I've been trying to keep up with it. But just some of the questions we've been asked have been, first of all, we had a few people ask, like, was there a stipend? There was no stipend. There was no stipend for faculty. We asked if we could, and they were like, no. We kind of got laughed at, so we didn't have a stipend. And this, I think, also goes into a question that was about marketing. How did we market this to faculty? Northwestern is not a campus that had a lot of general interest in online teaching and learning. We, for years, had these learning designers on staff that would be busy, but there was always a sense that they were trying to get people to buy in to using Canvas, even using the course management system, let alone any other technologies. And so we've really seen that because of our move to remote work due to the pandemic, we have seen a total explosion in interest because faculty are now finally being forced, unfortunately, but coerced into learning about this. So it's been kind of a thanks COVID moment for us that they are starting to be interested in this. So that's sort of one way I think the marketing is coming, is just people realize they are uncomfortable with this new mode of teaching. But we also, when we developed this, we had support from the provost's office. So the provost, our interim provost, mentioned it at faculty town halls. It was mentioned in email communications. It was publicized by the deans of each college. There were specific emails sent to all faculty teaching in the upcoming quarter. So like all the faculty who were teaching in the summer got an email asking them to sign up. And we didn't have anywhere near 100% enrollment. We didn't have the capacity for that because of the cohort structure, because of the one-on-one meetings with the learning designers. But we did have, we do feel like we've been able to meet the need meet the need that has come to us. And then there were a few questions, kind of, one person asked, isn't the role of the facilitator a lot like that of an embedded librarian? The answer is yes. Like, we're not saying we're doing something brand new here, but I think what makes this a little different is we're not teaching people about the library's resources or the library. We're teaching people about campus and the resources available on campus and online teaching. But we're using the exact same skill set to do this, which is listening to questions, connecting people with resources, talking to colleagues, really using our social networks to answer these questions about online teaching. And then also the same way we would create sort of a welcoming climate in a information literacy instruction session, we're doing the same thing when we're talking with faculty. So it's the exact same skill set, just used, I think, in a new and different context. So those are the main questions I saw, but let me catch up. I don't know. Let's see. Yes, collaboration has been key. We are still too early out to know whether or not attendees have used all of these methods from the practicum in their own courses. So we did an initial assessment at the end of the practicum, which finished up in the beginning of our summer quarter in late June. We just did a really like a confidence summary. Like, how do you feel now? Do you feel better? Do you feel worse? Do you feel like you learned? Which we know is affective. It's not a perfect form of assessment, but we are now going back at the end of summer quarter and asking those faculty again, what did you actually implement from the practicum into your own courses? So we're really still too early to know whether or not they implemented everything that they'd learned. But remember, another part of this was just growth in knowledge. We weren't trying to make people experts and to create these like beautiful online courses that could take normally 3 months to develop. We were really just trying to get people comfortable and ready to do more online than they otherwise would have been. So stay tuned. We're talking about presenting this more once we have more data, but we're still at the beginning stages of this project, really. So Mackenzie asks, was anyone from a DEI department included in the creation of these workshops? Sort of, and I say sort of because we all have some experience in grounding in DEI and issues related to DEI, but we don't have a session about DEI. And especially with the events of June, the whole month of June, the whole summer, with the increase in Black Lives Matters protests and a new social justice grounding in so much of our work, we see that gap and are looking for ways to incorporate that as we move forward into the fall and into planning more for the fall. I don't know about enrollment of the OER session and was it popular, but we've been offering it every 2 weeks. So we weren't necessarily hoping to get max capacity, but we are seeing that there has been an uptick in the number of people reaching out to our OER librarian and the OER team. So I don't have data on that, but I know it has been positive. And again, we're just trying to raise visibility of some of these issues, so exact metrics aren't really as important as the relationships that we're starting to build from all of this. Tracy, should I just keep going? Is this okay? I'm just okay. Another question, did the university hire design consultants for this program? We already had learning designer consultants on staff at the School of Professional Studies or Northwestern IT. We have, due to this practicum, due to the fact that capacity of the practicum was limited by the number of learning designers we had, we were able to make the argument to hire more learning designers on a temporary basis. So I think I'm not 100% sure where we're at, but I know that that was a project that one of my colleagues was taking on in Northwestern IT. So for colleges without staff learning design consultants, I'd say see if you can make an argument to just get a few hired on a temporary basis. You don't have to bring them on staff as full employees. But I think there was actually an article just yesterday or recently in Inside Higher Ed about how these learning designers who before were sort of extra on campus are now crucial employees because they need to be there to help faculty get ready for remote teaching. So we already had some on staff, but we're actually looking to hire more because of this gap that we're seeing. The librarians, when they were facilitators, they had access to the Canvas course as teachers, so they could see some content that was hidden and they could see the student view. So they were just added like any of the workshop leaders were added, they were just added as teachers. So we don't really use the librarian role at Northwestern. We're either teachers or viewers, but so so that's the answer to that question. I think we're still working on the Canvas course, and actually, as mentioned, as alluded to, we are not experts in online course design. I don't work with Canvas hardly at all, other than to do what we do in the library. So I don't know about Canvas Commons, but I think I will definitely bring that question back to the planning team because that would be an interesting idea. They put so much work into this course and making it look nice. We haven't talked about supporting hybrid courses. Specifically at Northwestern, there's going to be very, very, very few hybrid courses or in-person courses in the fall. And that's just it's a big concern that's we don't address it other than to say, well, you can incorporate universal design for learning in the practicum in general, or not in the practicum, in your course in general. But we don't discuss hybrid, especially since this is Foundations of Online Teaching, where the scope is very narrow on that. So, okay, I'm going to let Tracy answer this question now. How well did the breakout rooms work in Zoom? Were there hiccups, and did the faculty have problems using to them or getting used to them?
Breakout rooms worked very well. By the time that I had gotten to that point where I needed to put a breakout room event together, I had a little bit of experience this spring, although Northwestern just adopted Zoom as a tool in February of this year, so it was new really to all of us, but it worked well. I think just seeing it from the get-go on that very first meeting really helped because they weren't afraid of it. They took to it right away, so we didn't have any trouble at all.
Mackenzie notes it is in the Canvas Commons. She came across it accidentally. So there you go. That answers that question. I think it's really going to depend on, the next question is, do you anticipate librarians will continue the facilitator role in Canvas beyond the practicum? And I think the hope is yes. I mean, the hope is that because we did a rough disciplinary match between librarians and faculty, which I didn't even say that, but we tried to match STEM librarians with STEM cohorts, arts and humanities librarians with arts and humanities cohorts. Because of that matching, we hope that we're starting these relationships that will continue on and really make sure that faculty continue to see their facilitator as someone who can help them navigate these campus resources, but also navigate the library when they have those questions as well.
All right. So thank you so much, Michelle and Tracy. This is Mark jumping back in because we're coming up on the end of the hour. Thank you for taking the time to explain exactly what you did and how these practicums worked. I think you can see in the chat and the Q&A, lots of folks just being very appreciative. So we thank you so much for taking the time to put all of this together and to present it to all the folks out there. I have to jump into the basement because there's a tornado warning right now. I will just say thank you so much, and
thank you.
We will talk with you all soon.
Thank you, guys. Be safe.
All right.
Be safe.
You too. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have to go?
Yes, I'm just trying to